I was lucky enough to receive a early access code for The Thing Remastered. So all of my opinions are based on an earlier build of the game, so please bear that in mind. Night Dive are at their best when they take a game from the 90s or early 2000s before HD graphics, before PBR textures, and before real-time lighting. The Thing happens to be from the early 2000s. It didn't use PBR textures or shadow mapping or per pixel lighting. So The Thing was the perfect candidate for a remaster, and Night Dive are the perfect people to do it. They say photography is all about the lighting. Well, the more I play Night Dive games, the more I realise that games and graphics are all about lighting too. The Kex engine makes the lighting in The Thing Remastered look so good. It really brings the environments to life. I've already done a full graphical comparison video on my channel, so I won't repeat myself, but I'll let some of the comparisons play on screen now. It's not just the lighting engine that's been changed. You can see that there's upgraded textures and even additional geometry and new models. And something I thought was really cool was the addition of this new lab room. It's actually not a new room. This room was in the original game, but it was more of like a transformer room or something like that, but now it serves a new purpose as an addition to the actual lab with examination tables, which is pretty cool because the movie had these type of locations, so it's more true to the actual movie now. Before I continue on about the other changes in The Thing Remastered, I do want to address the elephant in the room. I would be doing a disservice to everyone watching this video if I didn't first talk about the infection system. The question on a lot of fans' minds leading up to the release of this game is, are the scripted infections going to be in the game or will they be removed? I really wasn't sure if Night Dive would address this issue because this is a remaster and not a remake, and I was expecting this issue to fall outside the scope of this project. However, I'm happy to report that the scripted infections are no longer in the game. So now squad mates only become infected by direct contact with the Thing, and not only that, but NPCs are now more prone to infection. So things do feel a little bit more dynamic. For anyone who doesn't know what I'm talking about, I'll give a brief demonstration of how the original game worked. In the original game, there were certain sections where even if you recently tested your squad mate, he would still turn into the Thing. There were two key parts in the game where this happens. The first place this happened was the opening between these two walls. For some reason your squad mate just cannot pass through this opening. There must be a trigger in this opening that just turns your squad mate into the Thing. I was really surprised when I played the remaster that my squad mates just walked through with no problems. It felt really weird to me, like I was just expecting them to turn. And I'm really happy to see that that's no longer the case. I think the reason for this scripted infection was that later on in the level there's a narrow passageway you have to walk across that the AI just doesn't know how to cross. I even tried to push my squad mate onto the platform to see if they would actually walk the rest of the way, but it didn't work. This part of the level is a very narrow ledge, and it also leads to a vent that the squad mates don't know how to get into. So I can see why the original devs put in this scripted infection, because they knew that eventually your teammates would have to be left behind anyway. But it is nice that in the remaster we get to hang on to our squad mates for a little bit longer. The next scripted infection happens just before you fight one of the bosses, and again there's an invisible wall right here. It's actually between this archway. The player just stops following you and then turns into the Thing. I think the reason for this one is purely that the original devs just didn't want you to fight the boss with your squad mate. But the good thing is in the remaster the kill wall isn't there, or the infection wall isn't there, and our squad mate can follow us right to the boss. And also a nice little touch before the boss is there's an extra health pack or little health cabinet here, so you can stock up on health before you fight the boss. I love how the PBR textures make the bosses look super slimy, and even though your squad mate doesn't do too much against the boss, at least he takes the attention off you for a little bit so you can get some shots into him. The next biggest change with the Thing Remastered is balancing out the difficulty. Towards the end of the game the difficulty was legendary. and is easily one of the biggest complaints if you go back and watch videos about it. Kaiser posted on the Night Dive Discord asking for some information about how they might rebalance the game and which parts of the game were the toughest. So as I was already doing a playthrough of the game, I put together a clip of one of the hardest sections of the game, which is this long ramped section where enemies basically spawn infinitely, you don't have any health pickups, and there's a bunch of turrets waiting for you at the very bottom. Not only that, but you have to defeat a boss and then make your way back up the spiral section while everything's exploding and there are no health pickups, or at least there are very few health pickups. You can easily get save trapped in this section where you just can't progress because you don't have enough health and everything's blowing up, so you just can't survive. Saying it's hard to live is an understatement. But true to his word, Kaiser has fixed this section in the remaster. There's now multiple health pickups and it's still challenging, but it just takes a lot of the pain out of the challenge. Pain and frustration, I should add. There is one other section that Kaiser reworked that I want to bring up, and it's the air-based tower section. In the original game there was an objective where you had to snipe 4 different C4s in quick succession or else you failed the mission. The objective has just been a little bit more streamlined. Now you come up in the tower and open the 2 hangar doors and you can just take your time about placing the C4 and actually shooting it. You're not timed and you're not really able to feel it the way you were before. I don't think we're really losing anything by this coming out. It just was removed to avoid confusion and frustration for new players. One other thing that may seem like a minor change but actually bugged me quite a bit in the original game was the menus were very awkward and hard to read. I'm not sure if it was the font or the lack of paragraphs or just the way you interact with the menu, like the scroll system, just for some reason I didn't like. But I'm pleased to see that there's a little bit of graphic design has gone into the notes now, and the menus in general all look pretty great and are all responsive and easy to use, and just much easier on the eye. Another change I was really surprised to see them actually make is in this warehouse section. When I was playing this a few months ago to get some footage, something really annoying happened in this warehouse, but something that I never thought Night Dive would fix in a million years. You have to walk around this really awkwardly placed column, and when I tried to do this, my character just slipped off the platform. I just kind of shook my head and thought that was dumb, and I'm glad I kept my recording because Night Dive actually fixed this. Not only that, but they actually changed the layout of the walkways and I believe made them a little bit wider. You can see now the column is placed slightly to the left just to give you that little bit more room to get around it. New players would probably not pick up on this detail, and even returning players that haven't played the game for many years will never remember the column placement. However, if they did get knocked off the edge, it would be a problem. I went back to this location after playing the remaster and completely accidentally fell for the exact same mistake just from trying to walk across it. I've tried my best in this video to cover the main changes, but I do want to just end by saying that in general the game feels so much better to play. I don't really know how to describe it, but the controls just feel smoother. Also, the flamethrower has been greatly improved. The original game, the flamethrower felt like you were pointing at your feet and basically it was a liability. You were more likely to burn yourself than anything else. In the remaster, I feel like the flamethrower is pointing forwards now and I'm much less prone to burning myself. It's not going to be the dynamic experience a lot of people have been asking for. The core game is still very much the way it was back in the day. As it should be. I mean, this is a remaster, it's not a remake. This isn't a totally different game to the original. I think anyone asking for that, they're just missing the point of a remaster. It's to really celebrate the original game, but with adding some quality of life improvements and improving the graphics, which is exactly what Night Dive have done. A lot of people have watched the Thing movie and expect to play the exact experience of the movie where there's this dynamic infection and your team can be wiped out by at any moment. That's just not what this game is. Stephen Kick was actually interviewed, and I'll share a link to it in the description of this video, but he actually shares an anecdote about how the original developers had planned a sequel where they would implement a type of dynamic infection system. They experimented with a system where if a member of your team became infected and you couldn't eliminate the threat in time, the infection would spread and cause you to lose the game. However, this posed a major issue. If the infection started elsewhere in the open world, outside of your control, you could lose within a few minutes. Given this challenge, it's understandable why the original game used some scripted infections. So if you're a fan of the original game, I would highly recommend picking this up. It really does the game justice and adds so much more quality of life improvements. I do have a graphical comparison on my channel, and I'll also have a playthrough of the game because I'm really enjoying it and I'd like to share that playthrough with everyone. I recently started up a survival horror website, so if you're interested in horror games, please do check it out. I've spent some time pulling that together, and we also have a Discord group, so feel free to join that if you'd like to talk about survival horror. I wouldn't class the thing as a survival horror. It's more accurate to call it a squad-based action horror. Ammo's pretty abundant in the game, and it's fairly well packed with action sequences. You know, most of the time you're just spending shooting the enemies. You're not really avoiding anything the way you would do in like traditional survival horrors. But it's definitely a very good action horror, so I want to write an article on my website about it, and I'll leave links to all of these things in the description. Thanks again to Night Dive for giving me a review code, and thanks for watching this video.